So this morning's sermon, or message, teaching, whatever you want to call it, is called Why You Need Jesus to Spit in Your Eyes. I'm going to like that one. So this is going to be an illustrated sermon. Can I get some? No, I'm kidding. I thought about having some safety goggles and a face shield. Like, okay, I need a volunteer. Why you need Jesus to spit in your eyes. We're going to be looking at John chapter 9. Jesus heals the man who was blind from birth. And a couple of weeks back, I was praying, like, okay, God, what's kind of the next message? And I just kept getting that picture of Jesus right in the dirt, and this idea of the idea of somebody spitting and making mud out of the dust with their spit and putting it on. How many of you would stick around for that, doctor? You know, this guy's a quack. That's just the thought of that, especially in our culture. And historians, there was perhaps in their culture, spit was looked at a little bit different. They didn't understand germs, and so if someone was very holy, sometimes they believed that their spit might have supernatural healing powers. But what is interesting, as we will look at this story, that this man, it wasn't that he had an infection and all of a sudden was blind. It wasn't as though he was wounded, he got punched, and it was swelling, they were concerned. He was born blind. And unlike today, you know, we can sometimes correct, but there's certain things even modern medicine cannot fix, right? There's just certain things they cannot do yet. Maybe at some point we'll be able to grow new eyeballs and pop them back in there, but the eye's a pretty complicated thing. We don't have that yet. So what makes this miracle so incredible? What God did. But our big idea as we go through this passage, this is the heart of what we are wanting to take home. We are all born into brokenness. We all are born blinded by the effects of sin in a broken world. We all are in need of being healed and made anew. Only Jesus has the power to heal and restore what has been broken, missing or stolen from our lives. Even the things broken or stolen from before we were born. How many of you have maybe family issues, things in your life that have kind of plagued your family for years, whether it's alcoholism or different things, and there's certain things that we are just born into the consequences of. We physically sometimes can inherit great genetics and sometimes not so great genetics. My genetics, I think, are good, but I am not prepared to be an NBA center. You know, I've got this little bump in the back of my head where you're like, I've wondered, but I never asked what that was I was born with. My great-grandfather had one on his forehead, so I got the better end of that deal. But we're all born. I see there's a lot of glasses in the room. There's probably a number of medications. We are broken. The spiritual or the physical brokenness that we are born into is a reflection of the spiritual brokenness that we are born into. You tracking with me?
Yeah.
John chapter 9, verse 1 through 11. As Jesus was walking along, and just to preface this, back in John chapter 8, before the religious leaders were questioning Jesus, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Well, he's about to reveal who he is in a very powerful way. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, which means teacher, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? So in that time frame, and some of their theology at that time is they believed that God controlled absolutely everything. And so if you were born broken, if you were born blind or less than, well, it must be because of somebody's fault. It must be that there was something your family, your parents did, or there was even, they wrestled, some of these religious leaders at the time, they wrestled with the idea of maybe even as an infant within the womb that you can sin, and maybe that caused it. So they're having all these arguments, and like us, they wanted to have something to blame for the brokenness in this world. They wanted to have a reason, excuse, someone to blame. And so the easiest thing was like, well, if you're born blind, we can't explain, well, it must be somebody's fault. And so his disciples are weighing in, and, well, Jesus, you're our teacher. You weigh in on these current day issues. Who's at fault for this man being born blind? Verse 3, Jesus says, it was not because of his sins or his parents' sins. It was not because, now he didn't say they were sinless. But he said this brokenness, this issue, is not because of their sins. God isn't punishing us and breaking us because he's mad at us. It's a theology that Jesus was trying to get there, that God is not smiting you because of the sin in your life. And Jesus answered, this is a tough passage that sometimes we read and we wrestle with understanding. Jesus said, this happened so the power of God could be seen in him. How many of you read that before and thought, what does that mean? This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. The first time I read that as a kid, I'm like, well, God, there's got to be a better way to reveal who you are than making this man blind. Well, that's not what Jesus was saying. He goes on to say, we must quickly carry out the task assigned us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I'm here in the world, I am the light of the world. The power of God seen in him. No one singular person is to blame for this man's situation. There's oftentimes not one singular person that perhaps is to blame for our situations and our brokenness, whether born or what came after. But God, who created the universe out of nothing, what we're seeing happening here is God is revealing himself, that Jesus is revealing himself as the creator, as God who is in charge of all. But God, who created the universe out of nothing, who formed man from the elements of this planet. You see that God formed Adam from the dirt, from the soil, which is what we're about to see God, or Jesus, imitating here in the next part. Who formed man from the elements of this planet is the very God who will take this man's chaos, will take this man's brokenness, and give it purpose and order. That God will take the impossibility of this man's situation and make possible new life. It's a profound, beautiful passage, piece that Jesus is saying. He's saying, this man's brokenness, this man's impossible brokenness that is here, it's there, but I'm going to show that I am God. Just in creation, when God created everything from nothing, when the atoms and the whatever, I can't remember, astrophysics are flying around and the universe was in chaos, and God hovered over the waters of chaos, and he began to form and bring form to the planet. He began to bring order and bring about creation and create man. In the same way, God is wanting to reach into the brokenness and the disorder of our chaos in our lives, and the things that we were born into, and bring order and purpose and present and display his power. That he is able to bring about new life. So in verse 6, so keep in mind that Jesus is saying, I am the light of the world. He's saying, we see a lot of metaphors here, one with him being creation, what he's about to do here with the blood and the saliva. But that he's the light of the world, and that he is the one that actually is the one who enables us to see. Verse 6, then he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. he told him, "Go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. So we see that this echo of the creation story where God created man perfect in his image. This perfected creation from the dirt, from the mud. And Jesus said this man was born imperfect. But he reached down and like a symbol, he made mud from his own spit, from his own source, his own life, and smeared it, put it, recreated this man's eyes. Jesus was revealing that he was God in flesh. That he is the creator, that he can bring new life. And the second part, went, washed, and came back seeing. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. So say that with me. Went, washed, came back seeing. How many of us sometimes we're praying, we've got a miracle, we've got a situation that we need God to work within our lives. We're praying, God, how are we going to get through this? God, how am I going to get through this? We say, God, God, heal me, help me. God, fix this situation. And God says, okay, here's what I want you to do. And imagine if we were the blind person sitting there, and first Jesus says, okay, starts making mud. What is wrong with this man? All right, God, I'll trust you. All right. Puts the mud on. And then he says, go, wash. And we would go, but God, how many times do we do this? God, that's too far. What if the blind man had said, okay, I'll let Jesus meet me here, I'll let him put the mud on my eyes, but you're asking me to go too far. What if the blind man said, God, I don't want to go to that pool. Either it's too far away, I'm still blind, God. You just put mud on my eyes, I can't see, I was blind, and now I've got mud on my eyes, I'm doubly blind, and you want me to go and do this? Or what if he had said, God, there's somebody at that pool, I don't go to that pool, okay? God, I can't, send me to a different pool, I can't go to that pool, there's somebody there that said something about me once, there's some drama, I don't like them, that's just not going to work, okay, Jesus? It's not our place to ask or question when or how Jesus is going to restore and heal us. But we are to be obedient to what God is speaking to us. And that blind man didn't make excuses. We don't see that recorded, at least. He's blind. He doesn't even fully know who Jesus really is yet. He just knows, seems like a good teacher. And this man spits it in the ground, puts mud on his eyes, and says, go to this place you've probably been to before. Which some of us do that. God will call us and ask us to do something. And our response will be, well, I've tried that already, God. That's not going to work. Nothing happened last time. But Jesus said, go and wash. So the man went, and he washed, and he came back seeing. The man walked in obedience to what God was speaking to him. So sometimes we're asking for God to do a work in our lives, to heal us. There's maybe something we were born broken with. There's something in our lives we need Jesus to recreate within our lives. And he starts speaking to us. And sometimes we respond to God, but God, I'm not healed yet. I can't do this till you heal me. And what God is saying is, no, your healing will come through your obedience to what I am calling you to do. Even those things that don't make sense. It didn't probably make sense to them at the time why Jesus was putting mud on this man's eyes. They didn't realize yet that the God who created our very being was the same God that was recreating, that was taking that beautiful symbol of the mud and recreating this man's vision. We don't always have sight yet in the moment to see what Jesus is doing and to see clearly. You said, I am the light of the world. And he's saying, when this man sees me, when this man walks in obedience to me, he is going to see and he's going to understand. Those questions that man was probably dealing with his whole life. We see this in his whole life he'd been in this situation. His neighbors, verse 8, and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg? So this guy's come back healed. They're confused. He's got eyes. Some said he was, and others said, no, he just looks like him. But the beggar kept saying, yes, I'm the same one. When we allow God to heal us, to make us new, the people around us who knew us as spiritually blind and broken will see a new us. When we walk in obedience to what Jesus is calling us to do, we will come back seeing. We will come back different, changed. We will look different. And the people around us will notice there is something. You look like the same person. You still talk like the same. But there's something different about you. Same but renewed, recreated us. Verse 10. They asked, who healed you? What happened? He told them. The man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool. I love it. He just says, the man they called Jesus. He spread mud and put it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. So I went and washed, and now I can see. What is God calling us to do this morning? How many of you are in process? Sometimes there's things in our life that God heals immediately, and there's other things that it's a gradual process. There's still things that God's saying, okay, now go and do this. And we go and do that. We come back in that area of our life that's healed and restored. When God says, okay, go and do this, or we heal a little bit more, and we're like, I'm not fully there yet. God says, I know, I'm working. Now go and do this. Sometimes God knows that if He says, go to the pool, some of us just aren't going to go to the pool. And God is gracious and He is patient. The Word says it is His kindness that leads us to repentance. So I think sometimes what God will do is say, hey, I want you to take 2 steps forward. Huh? Just take 2 steps forward. Okay, I can do that. Hey, certain things are a little better. What's going on? Okay, God, this is cool. Take 4 more steps. All right. And gradually God's getting us to the place where we need to be so that we can be washed. So that last bit can be recreated and restored and made new within our lives. We need to not get frustrated when we don't see clearly right away. We need to stop and just say, okay, God, what are you speaking to me? And trust that if Jesus is the light of the world, if He is the light, we don't need to see and understand every situation in our life. We don't need to know the answers to every problem and every little nuance within our life. We need to look to Him, and if we can see Jesus, we will see everything we need to see to fulfill His purposes in our lives and to be restored. We are all broken. We are all born spiritually blind. And if you're like me, there's times where you're walking, Jesus just opens your eyes, and yes, I can see, thank you, Jesus, and then we get stupid and we poke ourselves in the eye with sin or something, and we make a mess, and all of a sudden we're bleeding and we feel as though we've lost our sight. Or we're just so covered with life and situations and sin that just drapes over us like a veil. It just seems to blind us and cover us. We can't see clearly what God is leading us to. And I'll close you that this can happen, and it's not until we choose to stop trying to look through that at the world around us and figure things out. When we choose just to look at Jesus, we hear His voice. When you feel spiritually blind, when you don't know where to go, what to do, stop and listen to the voice of God. Listen to the words of Christ in Scripture and respond in obedience to what He is calling us to do. Because it's not until we met Jesus that we were given sight. It's not until we haven't done that. It's not until we meet Him. It's not until we walk in obedience to what He's calling us to do and believe and obey what He is speaking to us that we can finally see that what we thought was unhealable and unrestorable, we'll find out is actually possible. Because Jesus' very purpose was to restore our sight so we could once again as humanity see Him, see beauty, see purpose, see hope within our lives, so that God's plan to heal and restore goes deeper and beyond what we could have imagined for us. See, this man thought that his only issue was that he needed eyes to see so he could work and not be a beggar. But as he begins to realize and see who Jesus is, there are so many other aspects. Not only did God heal his eyes, God healed this man's identity. The community knew him as just the blind beggar. But when Jesus restored his sight, when Jesus healed him, He restored his identity. He was no longer this poor beggar. He was the man who Jesus healed. He was the man who had an impossible ailment, this impossibility in his life that God turned and made possible. So just to close, I want to challenge us this morning. And I think in many ways we have that blind man's perspective. Where sometimes we're sitting in a situation or something that we've just part of who we are, we were born with. A broken nature. And how many of us have those things in our lives that maybe we were born with, whether family or just are things we have, physical, mental, emotional things that we were born into. We either are part of ourselves or inherited from our family. And we could be sitting there, perhaps, doesn't see this, but that man could have been sitting there with this perspective that we sometimes have, struggling with, why do I have this God? Why me? Why am I broken in this way and someone else isn't? God, I didn't ask for this. When you've had a conversation with God, God, please don't be mad at me. I didn't ask for this struggle. I didn't ask for this physical weakness or abnormality or disease. God, I didn't ask for this mental depression or this addiction or abnormal or unhealthy impulses or desires. God, I didn't ask for this emotional anxiety or anger or apathy, the cynicism. Lord, I didn't ask for this difficulty to understand and communicate with other people. Lord, I didn't ask for feeling alone, and even in a crowd among family and friends. Anybody relate? God, I didn't ask for this. And there could be the response too. This man could have had the response of Jesus coming up to him, saying, hey, I want to heal you. And this man could have said, oh, you want to heal me now? You want to heal me now, God? Like, do you know how much I've gone through? Do you know how long I've been a burden to my family? Do you know how long I've been called the worthless beggar? God, you want to heal me now? Forget you. That could have been his response. That's probably been a number of our responses at different times in our lives. Because we don't see clearly, we don't understand yet what God has been doing. We don't understand that He has been with us the whole time. That even in our brokenness, and we forget that Jesus was broken and mangled beyond recognition on the cross so that He could share in our brokenness, so that when He rose into new creation made whole, we could also share and rise with Him out of our brokenness into newness. We could respond, Lord, where were you when I was at school getting picked on? Where were you when I overheard my parents talking about what a burden I have got? Where were you when, and you could insert your own thoughts there. Where were you? And God wants you to know that He never left you. He has been there with you. He has been working the entire time, speaking life over you. And at this moment, Jesus, just as He stood before that blind man, is standing before us right now. And He's whispering and He is speaking to us. Calling us to walk in obedience to His voice so that He can fully restore our sight, fully restore our brokenness. God is a God who heals. And we can't sit and say, God, why aren't you working in my life if we aren't walking in obedience to His instructions? Because it's in obedience to His instructions. When He said to the beggar that was crippled, stand up. If that crippled had never stood up, would he have known his legs worked? If Jesus hadn't said go, and that blind man had never got up and went and washed, what if He said, this is stupid, and just try to wipe off the healing? Sometimes we do that. God is doing stuff in our life that God is using to heal us. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. It's probably not comfortable walking with mud, even in your eyes, even if you're blind. And there's things that God is doing, there's things that Jesus is doing in our lives that is uncomfortable, and we don't understand it. But God is calling us to walk with it, to walk through it, towards the things He is calling us to do, so that we can find healing in Him. Thank God we have this beautiful illustration that this beggar was a man of simple faith. Simple faith. Okay, I'll do it. Got nothing to lose. But instead, this man, he responded to the voice speaking to him. See, he didn't know who Jesus was yet. He couldn't see Jesus clearly yet. But he responded to God's voice speaking to him. And so I just want to say this morning that God may be speaking to you right now. There are hurts, there's brokenness, there's something in your life that you know that maybe even people have used to identify you because of that brokenness. And God is speaking right now. We don't understand that He's been calling us. God, I don't understand why you have me in your church. God, I don't understand why you love me. I don't understand why you want me to serve and be a part of the body of Christ. Because God, look at me. I'm still broken. And God is saying, just trust me and listen to my voice. It may be uncomfortable. I've put some mud in your eyes. I've put some things in your life that if you know it's for me and it's making you uncomfortable, trust me. And walk in obedience to what I am calling you to. And return washed and seeing. Take obedient steps of faith and go and do what He is calling us to do. Allow Him to heal us and allow us to look upon Him. Because He is our light through and from which we will be able to see clearly the beauty of His purposes. And no longer be sitting in darkness, but then be sent out with not only sight, but His light shining out of us. that the world around us might see God's power in and through our healing and our restoration. How many have people in your lives that you're praying for and you want to see them healed and restored? Show them by allowing God to heal and restore us. So that, like that man, we can go and say, look, this man called Jesus, he healed me. Let me take you to him so that you can meet him as well. Let's pray.